All right, let's go. Final exam, final presentation. Obviously, we're talking about the 2023 presidential vetoes of two Senate joint resolutions that were intended to strip endangered species protection for the lesser prairie chicken and the northern long-eared bat. Thankfully, President Biden put a kibosh on that, and for the time being, these two species remain protected. So the lesser prairie chicken is a totemic species of southwestern grasslands, and it is highly recognizable due to its spring mating display, its stout build, and bellowing call. Historical estimates suggest that lesser prairie chickens potentially numbered in the millions across the West. However, their populations have crashed as their historical range has dwindled by about 90%. Um, from populations potentially in the millions by 2012, the lesser prairie chicken population bottomed out at 35,000 individuals until the next year it halved to about 17,000 birds. This likely made its listing in 2014 a matter of urgent wildlife conservation. So as you can see on the slide here, I did outline kind of a timeline for both the lesser prairie chicken and the northern long-eared bat. The lesser prairie chicken was on the radar of Fish and Wildlife Service by 1997, and again, it was listed in 2014. Then it got actually delisted in 2016 after it rebounded in 2014 and 2015 as a drought in the West subsided. But because this species is kind of a boom bust species, biologists and scientists are worried that that this species may experience more busts because drought's not necessarily going away. So thankfully, it was relisted in 2022, which then led to the Senate joint resolution that sought to delist it once again before President Biden vetoed that motion in September of 2023. Meanwhile, the northern long-eared bat got on the radar of Fish and Wildlife Service in 2011 when it was petitioned for listing, and then it was listed as a threatened species by December of 2013. The long-eared bat is a wide-ranging, federally listed endangered bat species that's found in 37 states and 8 provinces in North America, so up into Canada as well. This species typically overwinters in caves or mines and spends the remainder of its year in forested habitats. So although there's many threats to the long-eared bat, the predominant one is white nose syndrome. And if that syndrome, that disease had not emerged, it likely wouldn't have experienced such a dramatic population decline that necessitated its listing and protection under the Endangered Species Act. Let's see. It also was proposed for uplisting in March of 2022, which then led to it being listed as endangered, which then prompted the Senate joint resolution in May of 2023 to downlist it, and then President Biden's veto again in September of 2023. So some ecological effects or ecosystem services associated with these two species. I'm going to start with the lesser prairie chicken. It's an indicator for healthy grasslands, as President Biden actually mentioned in his veto. There are two distinct population segments, a northern and a southern one. The northern one has, I guess, 3 different eco-regions across Colorado, Kansas, and Oklahoma, and parts of the northeastern panhandle of Texas. While the southern population segment is the one that's protected as endangered. Again, the northern population segment is only protected under Section 4D of the Endangered Species Act. Let's see. Oh, so just to touch on the threats, its primary threats are related to habitat fragmentation and habitat loss associated with grassland conversion based on agriculture, energy development, but also drought, fire suppression, and pesticides, particularly in the Shinnery Oak prairie and the southern distinct population segment. Okay, so the ecological effects or ecosystem services associated with the uh, northern long-eared bat are actually pretty significant. Um, Bats eat many types of insects, including mosquitoes, moths, beetles, crickets, leafhoppers, and this helps to reduce the need for a lot of pesticides and saves the U.S. agriculture economy apparently at least $3 billion annually. Not only that, bats pollinate many plants, including a lot of fruits and agaves. And agaves are pretty, um, people appreciate them down here because they're the sole pollinator for tequila. Um, Not only pollination, but seed dispersal. And also, bats uh, provide fertilizer in the form of guano, which is a natural fertilizer. I mentioned white nose syndrome as a threat, but these bats are also threatened by wind energy, again, habitat loss both in their winter range and their summer range, and climate change. So, no congresspersons from New Mexico or my home state of Ohio co-sponsored either Senate joint resolution, so I chose to send a letter of gratitude to President Biden. He made his stance on the issue clear with his veto and ensuring protection of both species throughout his tenure. I don't expect to change his stance, obviously, as he's likely retired from politics at this point. However, as a soon to be former president, I do think that he still has some political capital, and I hope he will continue to be a champion for the environment. During his presidency, he set a lofty goal of 30% land and water protected for the U.S., but we're pretty short of that. I think he made some reasonable progress, though, in terms of expanding several national monuments, including Bears Ears, Grand Staircase, and also creating a couple national monuments. In doing so, he helped to conserve more than 24 million acres of public land. Not to mention reversing a bunch of, in my opinion, pretty harmful Trump-era policies, including gutting the Migratory Bird Treaty Act, the Clean Water Act and Waters of the U.S., and stripping a number of species of their protections under the Endangered Species Act. So, that being mentioned, if we're looking at the future of the Endangered Species Act, just check out Project 2025. It pretty clearly outlines the game plan for what the next administration wants to do. They want to rescind all the Biden rules that Biden essentially rescinded the Trump's rules. So taking away a lot of those Endangered Species Act protections, stripping out Migratory Bird Treaty Act, and some also policies relating to the CEQ and NEPA, specifically delisting the grizzly bear and gray wolf, not to mention, I'm sure, plenty of other species that pose obstacles to development and economic gains. All right, so politics and policy, literally defined by Merriam-Webster as an art, or politics anyways, as an art or science, though I'll refer to it more as a pseudoscience. I think it's more really a way of thinking or perspective on how to govern a country or a state. This perspective essentially defines or outlines people's values or certain institutions or even policies as their goals. Politics often interprets policies, I think, to achieve certain political goals. Meanwhile, policies, or what government should do about public problems, is kind of the outcome of efforts described and detailed by experts, but implemented by political actors. So politics are thus informed and analyzed by political actors or politicians, while policy is informed and analyzed by scientific experts. And these two groups focus on their preferred discipline and find themselves kind of siloed. So in this way, neither achieves the ideal union of policy and politics that's necessary to provide the greatest good for the public. With that, I know I'm over time, but here are my references of materials that I used when I was learning more about this issue and our current political climate surrounding the Endangered Species Act. So thanks for a great semester.